Hi, I want to share with you an exercise that I kind of spontaneously started doing that I've used in twice in the last few months to deal with things that I felt really stuck in and did not know how to process or how to clear what was at the root of it that was preventing me from resolving those issues. And I do want to say that it is absolutely NVC based. I mean, it comes from nonviolent communication, and in fact, it is something that is kind of the heart of what NVC teaches. So that's nonviolent communication from the book by Marshall Rosenberg. Um, and I have been using NVC for many, many years and have done a lot of trainings in it. And I even teach an NVC based course on it. And I recommend the book to everybody who does my clean parenting program. It's the only book that I recommend that everyone reads. So I do want to absolutely give credit there. But maybe the reason that I want to share it is to, I guess because for me, it was new to use it in this way, and I couldn't believe the power of it. And both times when I was trying to work through something, and I do have a lot of different tools that I use and that I even teach people, and yet in both of the situations that I want to talk about, that was the thing that finally allowed me to get to the heart of why I was stuck there and to feel like I got some resolution and did the right healing around it to allow me to move forward. Okay, so I do want to share the two examples. Um, yeah, so sorry, I'm trying to figure out which piece I want to start with next. So when I first, I guess, had the thought to use it, it happened when I got into kind of a romantic relationship a few months ago with someone for the first time in many, many years. And one of the things that I've struggled with in my life is love addiction. So that when I would get interested in someone or start dating someone, suddenly I really become obsessed with them and it kind of takes over my life. Some of you may relate since I tend to have a lot of followers who have a similar background of childhood trauma and emotional abuse, narcissistic abuse. So a lot of us tend to have some of the same behaviors and issues that we deal with. So anyway, so this happened, and it's something that I've been dealing with for many times, for decades. And it seemed like all the tools that I had were not quite getting to or helping me just really move forward. And at some point, I was on a walk, and I just thought, okay, so what I'm feeling is that craving. So I really know that in general, the way to heal is to just get into our body and really be present to whatever is going on in our inner experience. Just sit with it, feel the sensations, the feelings, and allow them to just work themselves through, which is what emotions and sensations do when you don't resist them and when you don't try to figure them out and when you don't analyze them to death. But this was such a big one, that craving, that I could not get to it. So what I started doing was asking myself, so kind of based on the idea of NVC needs, that any emotion that we experience, and I would say maybe even any sensation, comes from either a feeling, a need being met, or a need being unmet. So that's kind of how our body, our being, expresses whether our needs are being met or not. So I started just feeling into, okay, so in this very moment, what is it specifically that I'm craving that I think this relationship would give me? And I, started, it's almost like all the layers of it just started coming to the surface. So I remember like one really big one that came up one day was generosity. And I don't personally follow the NVC list of needs as it's, shown in the book and how some people teach. And I really just think of it more like, what is it that my heart is longing for? So just making it kind of broader than how it's often presented in NVC. So what came up in that moment was, I want the word generosity. And it was like generosity almost of spirit in terms of just seeing that what I do comes from good intentions, seeing that I'm a good person. So therefore, if I say or do something, that it's assumed that there's a reason for it and that the person would want to understand me and support me instead of blaming me, shaming me, telling me I was wrong for feeling this way or experiencing the situation this way, which is probably like a core issue that I have. So anyway, so what I did with that one, and then every other layer that got revealed in that for, I would say maybe a 2-week period, is I would just really sit with that. And for me, I know when I found the right thing, when my body kind of relaxes. When I thought of that word generosity, I felt my body relax. And I was like, okay, so what exactly does it mean? Obviously, it's true for me, but I don't know exactly what it, then I keep doing the digging work to really like get to the heart of what that's about for me. So anyway, so by sitting with that, what generosity meant for me and identifying it, then I just really sat with that, with just kind of that longing for that kind of generosity and for people in my life to see me this way. And then the other part that I did is that I committed myself to giving myself what I was wanting from other people. So the first thing for me was to identify what it was specifically that I was longing for, so that, because when I would just get this craving for this kind of connection, I couldn't sit with it. It was too big. So to me, it was by peeling every aspect out of it one by one that I was able to really work through the craving. And a massive amount of healing happened through it. So yeah, so the work for me was to identify what the longing was in that moment, and then to just really sit with it for as long as it felt alive in my body. So some of them, it was 20 minutes, and then I'd be able to move on to the next one. Some of them, it would be a day. Some of them, it would be 3 days that I could just feel myself, like my being just really wanting to sit with this until it had moved through. And then, then the other piece of work was, how do I give myself that generosity, and finding the places in me where I was just blaming myself or assuming that I had negative perspective of me when I did something that I didn't like or felt something that I didn't think I should be feeling. And also just honoring that, yes, my feelings have a reason and my behaviors have a reason, just like children's do. And it's just about identifying the unmet needs that lead to those and then figuring out how to meet them or how to heal the pain that is causing those feelings and behaviors. So anyway, that was really powerful, and it took me maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks, and I felt like I had kind of moved through it. And it feels like that love addiction stuff that I've worked through for decades does feel like it's out of my body. And I mean, yes, I've been doing healing work for 20 years, so I'm talking about the last piece that feels like it allowed it to topple over, which is what happens with our healing work. Like we work and work and work, and we never know when's the one thing that's going to make it tip So anyway, so that was amazing. And then, I don't know, I kind of moved on and went back to using my usual tools that I do, which are generally, yes, there's the NVC self-empathy process, which is a little bit different. There's a couple, I would call them presence practices that I do kind of spontaneously. I use the Byron Katie work, and I use talking with friends who really are what I would consider wise and experienced and who are really there for me and help me by just listening and giving me feedback. And then the other thing that I have been doing that's been probably my primary tool for the last several months since I found out about narcissistic abuse has been the program Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Program by Melanie Tanya Evans, which I recommend for everyone because it's so powerful. I've even recommended it to my children too. It's so powerful to really work through almost anything. And all of us have experienced emotional and narcissistic abuse because that's pretty much how our society is, and even our institutions and schools. So all of us carry that trauma in us. But the reason that I wanted to record this video is that yesterday I was really stuck in, and I'm sure I would be surprised if any of you could not relate to that, is that I found myself stuck in wanting to have conversations with people, like the people who actually are the ones who have led to me having narcissistic abuse syndrome, and just having conversations in my head, trying to get them to see my perspective, trying to get them to understand. And that is one thing that I've found has happened, a lot in the last few months since I found out about narcissistic abuse and that I suffered from it. And that the NARP program, the Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Program, didn't have a tool to help me with that. So I tried different modules, but I could never quite get to it. And then yesterday, somehow I remembered that, and I thought, okay. And I don't know about you, but for me, I found that that's been one of the hard things about recovering, about the narcissistic abuse recovery journey, is just this obsessive thinking about trying to get the other person to see, trying to convince them of the validity of the reality of their actions, or trying to convince them of the validity of our experience. And I believe that is a symptom of narcissistic abuse that we probably all have, but I'm sure even people who haven't experienced that have that too. But anyway, for me, that was one thing that I found that the NARP program was not helping really me with, or not specifically in the way that I was looking for the help. So last night, laying in bed, as I found my mind, again, just going back to trying to respond to this crazy making conversation that I had this week, I was like, okay, so what is it? What is it that I'm longing for right now in this moment that's leading me to doing, to keeping going back to these conversations? And now I need to remember what the first thing was, because it kind of passed. Oh yeah. So the first thing was, which is, I mentioned it before, probably my biggest issue with these people and what's most affected me, is to have them just honor that my feelings and the way that I experience things is valid. So they're always trying to talk me out of what I'm feeling, that I should be feeling different, that I shouldn't be experiencing things this way because this person actually isn't this way, or because this thing didn't actually happen the way that I said. So there's always this pressure to feel or to experience things differently than I do, and to heal differently than I do, so that my process of healing is not right, and I should be able to somehow just talk myself through Anyway, so I just, again, it was like I was sitting there and I'm like, what is it that I'm longing for? What I'm longing for is just to have my feelings and experience seen as valid. And I could feel when I said that, again, just like I could just feel it in my heart. And in my body, like my body just kind of relaxed. And I just sat with that for, I don't know, for a while. And then I guess I probably fell asleep. And the thing about just sitting with it is that once we land on what is it that we're really longing for, oftentimes it allows as we sit with it, it allows our body to process anything, that's related to it, that's kind of keeping us stuck with, like, continuing to attract people and situations that are not, aligned with what we want, but that are aligned with what our past trauma is, our past experiences. And there's another thing I wanted to say to it. It's gone. Maybe it'll come back. Yeah, so it's really, it is doing this somatic healing work. Like, it just happens in our body. Like, we stop resisting it. We stop engaging in all the behaviors that come out of it, and we process the stuff out of our body, which means that now, having really landed on that, I know, or I imagine, hope, but I'm pretty confident that should I find myself in another situation where they're trying to talk me out of my feelings or experience, instead of engaging with them and trying to convince them, I'm just going to be like, those are my feelings. Like, you don't know what I should be feeling, and you don't have a right to tell me, because I'm now grounded in what's really true instead of in what's driving me crazy. And then, just to share a little bit more about it in case it's helpful, so that was last night, and then this morning I was still really sitting in that and feeling it in my body. And the thing is to just really give it space to process and do its thing and just kind of trust the process. And then, so again, at some point today, I found myself in conversation with one of those people. Like, I could feel the obsessive conversation in my head thing happening again. So I just did the same thing. Okay, so what is it that I'm longing for? Like, what is it that I'm trying to get out of them this time that's leading me to that obsessive thinking? And this time it was like just kind of wanting them to understand how humans function. Like, there's this weird belief in my family that we can decide how we feel, and we can decide how we experience things, and that we can decide to not be affected by things. Like, we can decide to be different than we are. And and also that other people they somehow feel like they have a right to tell me who I should be or how I should feel. And anyway, so in that moment when I felt into it, like, I could just feel my craving was to have them kind of understand how humans actually function, which is almost like understanding, like, law of gravity. It's like such basic knowledge for anybody who knows anything about, how humans function, like, emotionally. And to have them understand how healing happens. So, so that we could have sane conversations, and so that they could actually help me instead of just trying to change me, which never worked in 51 years, and just honestly pretty much like fucked me up really bad. So again, I've just been sitting with this. It's like, I just want them to have that basic knowledge. And it doesn't, so it's not about changing them. And it's not about It's just about me honoring what's true in me. And again, figuring out how to give myself what I want from other people. So, this is, so for any remnant in me that does believe that I should be feeling differently, that I should be experiencing life differently, that I should be able to have my healing journey be less messy and not have to look at where it comes from, and, so that it doesn't seem like I'm blaming anyone. So for me to just really honor that, no, this is how healing works. This is how humans function, and what I'm doing is what's needed and called for. And that's where I'm at, and that's what I need to do right now. So anyway, anytime you find yourself into any kind of obsessive thinking about something and you're not able to work through it with whatever tools that you have, just really try that, kind of following the general NVC idea, but really broadening it to what is it that I really long for from these people, and then letting go of that and sitting with the feeling of it, of what is alive in you relative to what your heart wants, and letting that do the work, and then figuring out how to give yourself that. So I'd really love to hear how that all works for you, and I hope you found this helpful. Thank you. Have a good day.